You say Katikas, I say Denaris. Let's call the whole thing an R-type ripoff. On Amigos, Everything Amiga. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Amigos. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
Today, Aaron, we're talking about Katikas. Or
What?
Denaris.
What? But not our type, that's for sure.
You know, Aaron, do you remember the first time that you heard about a video game being legislated against?
Well, yes, I think. The one that comes to mind, well, there are two that come to mind, of course. I mean, I hate to be generic, but they're the first ones I can remember ever having this happen would have been Mortal Kombat, and then that stupid Sega CD game
Night
with
Trap.
the Dana Plano Night Trap, right? Those are the two that come to mind. I mean, if there were any legislative before that, I mean, pinball obviously was legislative, but that's not really a video game. So those.
Well,
are
I'm thinking about. I think you're not thinking about this the right way.
Okay.
So when I say legislated against, I mean like the estate of Edgar Rice Burroughs suing the makers of Jungle King.
Well, it's funny you should. Now, this is the first time I'd heard about it, but this is apropos. I was flipping through X this week. Someone posted, I saw this come up on YouTube as well. A long time ago, Capcom sued Data East because a game called Fighter's History was too close in resemblance for their liking to Street Fighter 2. All right, and so I just saw someone posted a video that I guess had been exhibited in the courtroom of this Chinese lady who was beautiful and well-spoken, and she had a Street Fighter machine, and she had a 2 machine, and a Fighter's History machine, and she went through every count where Capcom demanded retribution that caused one character to be ripped off from another. And so, I mean, it was like 45 minutes of her going like, here's Kyle from Street Fighter. He's a military. That's an early one I remember. Of course, you mentioned Edgar Rice Burroughs and suing about that was Taito, I believe. That was Jungle King. It's funny. I swear to you, Boat. I swear to you. And this must be one of those things you remember when you were a little kid. I remember playing that game. It's funny. I mentioned that on the last ARG because one of the places I played games had a jungle hunt, and I swear to God, I remember that being called Tarzan, complete with the Tarzan in blue, like the Tarzan logo, on the marquee, with the guy yelling. Now, I must be on like a crazy man because as far as I know, that never happened.
Yeah,
Unless
they call that the
custom-made
Mandela
something.
effect.
Well, maybe of course, some of these little places, they would put on their, you could get maybe it was a bootleg board.
It could have been a bootleg. You're right.
So that's one. Is there one that you're thinking of in particular?
Well, there's that. There's Universal suing Nintendo for Donkey Kong.
Oh, yeah. That's a good
of
one.
course, the great outcome of that is that it was determined that Universal did not own the rights to King Kong at all in the way that they thought they did, which was interesting.
Yeah.
And so I always
many
enjoy
Pac-Mans, of course.
Yeah, I always enjoy reading about the court cases surrounding video games and copyright because it's interesting how like you said, if Capcom had won out against Data East, the entire genre of fighting games would not have taken off as it did. Now, I know that you're a big fighting game aficionado. If you were in a court of law, would you have ruled for Capcom?
Oh, God, no. Absolutely not. Because what they were trying to do was they were trying to claim ownership of the entire concept of a game based on fighting. I mean, the concepts of it. I mean, listen, the life bar was a standard video game trope about that time. All right? I mean, Karate Champ had it. A lot, or not really, it didn't. But a lot of games have a life bar, okay? Fighting was absolutely already around. Like, Karate Champs, where
or like ER Kung Fu, stuff like that.
I'm not sure. Yeah, it was around before Street Fighter 2, sure. And on top of that, when they talked about each of the individual fighters, you can't, like, for example, there are both games have a guy that's a Thai kickboxer. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing, and they guess what? Thai kickboxers do lots of kicks and elbows and knees, and sometimes they have a similar look because of the traditional way Thai fighters dress. But you can't claim ownership over the entire martial art of Thai kickboxing. It's because that's just the way it is. You could say you can claim ownership over Sagat, but you can't claim ownership over all of them, which is what they were trying to do.
Yeah,
it was. That's the kind of case I don't think that the courts were looking to try to set those kind of precedents and something like that because it's such a broad thing. It's just like, I mean, we talk about Karate Champ, and then look at something like all the various ripoffs of that we've played over the years on these various machines,
Mm-hmm.
And let's face facts, they're total ripoffs of Karate Champ, but it's karate. You can't, what are you gonna do? That's the way karate is. So if you say, hey, this guy owns all of karate, what are you doing? It's not like they created karate.
And it goes back to, all the way back to the Magnavox patents. I believe that up until fairly recently, every single video game console manufacturer was paying a royalty to Magnavox because they patented the idea of box you plug into your TV that plays video games.
Yeah. And that's the kind of thing where, like, when that patent was given, it made sense because no one had done it.
Mm-hmm.
So you're like, okay, yeah, cool. But I mean, here we are. I mean, you can't, that's like, it's funny when you hear people claim ownerships over certain joysticks or stuff like that. I mean, I see certain aspects that you can, engineered elements of a joystick, but to claim like an entire joystick, something like that, then you've got a whole different, what are we doing? Because it's a controller and these have been around forever. And we're going to go, how far back are you going to go? That's why I'm happy I don't actually have to go to court all that often. And trust me, after being in court multiple times, the idiot things I see juries do makes me scared for all times. So I just had an idiot jury screw me a couple months ago out of a case. So I don't
really. You
them.
lost for the first time.
Well, it's not like I lost. It's just that the guy got off, and he. But I mean,
I always think about you like Ben Matlock. You rarely lose.
Well, I'm not.
It might be possible that
for that guy.
It might be possible that your role in court is somewhat different than what I imagine in my mind as well.
I'm more like, I wish I was Perry Mason. You know what I mean? But I'm more like the idiot that Perry Mason calls up on the stand for like 5 minutes to establish something, and then I just go out for coke or something. I don't get to do anything really cool or important in court.
What's your court suit status right now? Do you still have the red shirt?
No, I've got no. We're going with a kind of an off grayish blue. I stopped wearing the Three Stooges tie. I'm out. So now I just like every other tubby stooge that walks into a courtroom with a dumb haircut and a ill-fitting suit. That's me. Old ill-fitting Jones. That's me.
I wonder do you think the sketch artist has ever rendered you?
Do you think they're going to put sketch artists in the courts I go to?
I don't know. I figured they were always there.
If they had a sketch artist in there, he'd be drawn in crayon on the back of a playing card. We don't merit. This is not like TV, Boat. There's no white Bronco. It's just a bunch of goofs that were on drugs or ran stop signs, stuff like that.
Well, Aaron, I guess we'll have to bring this section of banter to an end then and talk about Katikas.
That's probably a good idea. Pretty haunting tune there, Boat. That's the Katikas sort of / Denaris super theme, sorta. So this week we're going to be talking about a very unusual title here, and we'll get into the particulars. But I think we should start off, Boat, by because we're really starting out explaining the situation will go a long way as I read through the particulars. So the game we're playing is Katikas. Katikas first debuted on the C64 and then was going to make its way to the Amiga. Now, I'll start off by saying There are some similarities between the two games, but many, many, many differences between the two games on the C64. So I keep reading that the C64 version is sort of the origin version, but they're completely. It's not like they took anything from one to bring it over to the Amiga. They did not. This game was originally released in '88. Okay, so it's 1988 boat. And by the way, jump in anytime you feel like it. But so it's 1988, and an outfit called Factor 5 is developing a game, and they've developed Katikas for the Amiga. Now, what's a big game that's out about that same time, or a little bit before it, is a game a lot of people know called R-Type.
Right.
All right. We've actually covered R-Type. We maybe even covered the second one on here, Boat. I can't remember. But we certainly covered the first one. It's funny. I don't remember this story coming up during our coverage of R-Type. Do you?
Well, it's funny because, I'm looking at Lemon here.
Yeah.
And Lemon has a release date of Katikas from 88, Denaris 89.
Yeah.
And then they've also got Factor 5 developing R-Type, the actual port.
Right. Well, I'm going to tell you the story of that.
Okay,
Boat.
tell me, man.
So, Activision had paid big money to license. That was IRM that, ironically, because that's covered them. They paid big money to get the license for R-Type, a very popular game, as we found out when we covered it. There's a lot of fans of R-Type.
Yeah.
And so they were looking around to find a developer for R-Type on a couple of the home systems. They wanted to make that money because that was an expensive license. So all of a sudden, they get wind of this Katikas from Factor 5, and they're like, wait a cotton-picking minute. Like, this looks very similar to R-Type. Like, not good. And they looked at when it was going to be released. Here they are, they're going to get beat in the market with an R-Type clone before they've even found anybody to actually make R-Type. Okay? So, Activision's representatives get hold of Factor 5. They're like, listen, this Katikas is, we're not going to, that's no good. Like, it's too much like R-Type. And they're like, but we'll make you a deal. All right? If you'll go and rework Katikas to make it a little less like R-Type, then you could release that later. But first, we want you to develop R-Type. And so you can imagine, so the people at Factor 5, because they were, and the reason was Activision was impressed at how close they got this to being like what they were looking for.
Sure.
And they couldn't find anybody to make R-Type. So the people at Factor 5 was like, they were playing their cards close to the vest, but secretly, and I've read interviews with people that worked there, they were like, holy crap, it's our dreams come true. Because they were ripping off R-Type because they loved R-Type. But they didn't have the license for R-Type. But here's someone saying, like, listen, we demand you make your dream game. And they were like, we reluctantly accept. And so this is why Katikas was reworked into Denaris, and why Factor 5 did R-Type on the Amiga. I believe they also did like the C64 version as well. So this is how that story happened. Now, here's the funny thing about it. And this is so I can follow all that part, but here's the kind of puzzling part to me. I went and played, so I played Katikas, and then I found out about this story when I was researching this. And I was like, let me go play this Denaris and see how that plays. And I don't know if you tried both, but they play, I mean, at least the versions I had, and I've heard there are multiple versions, but the version I had played exactly like a Katikas. I couldn't tell any difference. Now, I read that there's a 1 and 2 disc version of these games, and the 1 disc game, I guess they reworked the maps in some way to make the earlier maps less like R-Type. But when I played it, it was identical. I couldn't tell any difference between the versions that I possessed. Okay, so your mileage may vary on this. I've read that the Denaris on other versions that I don't have, I've read that basically Katikas is in there. It's just, but they've scrambled some stuff up to make it look a little bit different. But I mean, on my version, it was exactly. Did you try both of them at all?
Yeah, I did. I'm not sure because I was playing the WHD version exactly what was what, but
That's
I
what I
do
played.
know that the two versions that I had were
Yeah.
not the same. You
Really?
started the game somewhere else in Katikas than you did in Denaris. So
That makes sense from what I've
Mhm.
read. Now,
But I
I
think
played
watching
it.
a playthrough,
Yeah.
of one of the two, I can't remember now. I did see the whole game is in both games. I think it's just the levels are slightly altered in some way.
Yeah, I mean, on my version, the first level and the second level were identical.
Okay.
So I can't explain that, but apparently I know there are 1 and 2 disc versions of this, and we may probably play different WHD loads of this. So anyway, that's the twisted story. So with all that said, the game that I concentrated on and played this week for the most part was Katikas, which is the one I'm going to pretty much concentrate on here. And I'm guessing you were the same way. But I'm guessing, by the way, you hadn't played this one before this week.
I had not played this one, no.
Yeah, I hadn't either. So, again, Katikas released in '88. Like I said, it was also on the C64. We'll get into the differences of the C64 in a little bit. Boat's got a lot to say about that. And we mentioned developed by Factor 5. You know, Factor 5, Boat, we looked at a lot of their stuff, including BC Kid, of the Turrican series. And I don't know, did we look at, I think we looked at this Tony and Friends Kellogg and Kellogg.
Oh yeah, well
yeah.
I covered that on the ranking of the Amiga platformer
That's it.
series.
I remember watching you play that. And I don't recall how that one ranked, but as I recall, it didn't look like garbage or anything.
No, it's fine. Yeah.
They had some pretty good games. We both like BC Kid. Of course, published by Rainbow Arts, who their big claims to fame, the games that we covered were the Turricans, of course, the Great Gaddis Sisters, and Muds. Remember Muds?
Mm-hmm.
This was produced by Mark A. Urich, who did the majority of the Factor 5 stuff, the Turricans, the Streetcar was one of his apprentice, Around the World in 80 Days, Bad Cats. This was coded by 3 different guys, Boat. So they had a lot of all hands on deck.
Mm-hmm.
God, these names. Aksha Muller, Lutz Osterkorn, and Holger Schmidt. These guys pretty much worked in between the three of them on everything that we previously just mentioned. They worked on the Turricans and BC Kid and the like.
I was going to say, you don't forget a name like Holger Schmidt.
You got that right. Willie Backer did the graphics. He worked on R-Type and Turrican 3. By the way, you'll notice a lot of these people worked on R-Type. I wonder why. Mm-hmm. Stefan Saud Paradis, he also worked on R-Type. I should mention I went and played R-Type this week just to see how it played. They must have taken graphics directly from this game and put them in R-Type. I'm serious, because there are tons of R-Type that looked identical to this, the backgrounds. The music in this, Darius Zinde, cool name. Yeah. He worked on a game called Tubular Worlds. We're going to try this game. It keeps coming up. He also did R-Type, a few others. And the box art was done by Saleh Camdenoroglu. So, that rolls off the tongue. And this was a 25-pounder when it came out, 24-pound, 95p, OCS. 2 disc, unless you got a special version that was 1 disc. So, with all that said, we'll move along here. So, Bo, tell the people, in your own words, what are we playing here?
This is a horizontally scrolling space shooter that takes place mostly in a corridor environment, although there are some sections that have open space. It is based on the R-Type power-up model, in which you slowly power up your ship with various accoutrements. You have a laser that shoots out in multiple directions. You have different sorts of drones that can fly around you, and you have a big, almost like I don't know, like a backhoe or something, like a releasable backhoe on the front of your ship that you can use to launch against other enemies, or it also acts as a kind of a shield mechanism.
I never, one time while playing this, thought to myself, it's like a cosmic backhoe. It never occurred
Man,
to me.
Cosmic Backhoe is a great name for the next Parliament Funkadelic album.
See, our scenario could be better than what they put in here. So I've got so I went. I don't think there was I couldn't find any printed manual for this, but I did find the printed manual for Denaris. And Boat, I want you to listen to this if you'll indulge me.
Okay,
and I want
will.
you to tell me if this story seems vaguely familiar. Okay. Throughout time, man has been a victim of his own intelligence. God, I know I have.
Yeah.
And his insatiable thirst for knowledge. The planet Denaris is a horrifying example. Scientists, pay attention here, scientists created machines which became so sophisticated they no longer depended on man, and so began a rule of tyranny.
Did it start with Judgment Day, perhaps?
The Denarian people tried in vain to destroy the machines with a mighty ballistic missile, but from the ashes of the nuclear fires, the machines rose up, more powerful than ever, trapped in an underground stronghold. Now the Denarians' only hope for freedom is the D5 H-75 Eagle Fighter, an ultra-refined space glider. Control the Eagle Fighter in this epic crusade against evil, and win freedom at last for Denaris. So once again, man has built a computer that has risen up and beat the crap out of us. How many games have we played over the years where that was the plot? I mean, it happens over and over.
It's an it's an easy device that makes sense in the content. What I want to know though is where does the actual action take place? Because this does not look like a planet's surface. This looks like you are in space, and then you are maybe going through the corridors of a giant space station.
See, the Denarians are trapped underground, but not you.
Yeah, right. I understand that. But like, where are you? So I guess here we are on the second level. If you're watching at home, you are sort of traipsing along the surface of the planet. I guess it's in areas because you see it's still riddled with just countless skulls and bones and things like that.
That's what happens when you launch a nuclear missile at your own planet.
You know, I question that decision. I question it.
Especially since you're fighting machines. What do they care? You think nukes are going to stop them? They're ultra intelligent, you idiots. This is one of those times where the machines deserve to win.
That's right.
In my opinion. We're fighting the wrong side in this. So you mentioned that you've got your, let's face facts, the R-type looking ship. I mean, they didn't really, it's pretty R-typey. It does look cool.
Yeah.
You know, I will say that. And you will pick up extra weapons along the way as you negotiate your way through these levels. Now, when you first start this game, you're instantly in the thick of it. Now, unlike R-Type or the C64 game, you know, R-Type has that big gimmick where you hold the button down to charge up the laser.
Yeah.
I tried to do that. That doesn't do that work in this. You don't get that power in this one. But what you do get is, I don't know, pretty rapid shooting if you hit the button fast enough. You're going to be out. As soon as the game starts, you've got to go to work. Because one thing I learned, I mean, and you may have a different opinion, but if you miss key power-ups, you're boned.
Yep.
Especially early on.
Anything, because you get the Cosmic Backhoe in the same spot every stage.
Yeah.
And so if you miss it, then you're dead. Because that thing is the thing that keeps you alive, because you're going to get hit, like it or not.
Oh, yeah. And by the way, the Cosmic Backhoe takes damage. And eventually, if you damage it enough, it'll start blinking, and then that sucker's gone. Right. No more backhoe. Now, it doesn't look like your upper or lower satellites take damage, because I've ran those things into everything, and they seem to be okay. So, as you go through the game, you can augment your ship. We've mentioned the backhoe. Boat mentioned the upper and lower satellites that basically you can have around you. Also, by the way, one thing you can do in this, if you've got the Cosmic Backhoe, you can hold your button down and sort of the backhoe will shoot out, and then it will come lumbering back to you.
Yeah. Did you find that to be incredibly useful while you were playing the game?
Well, you remember, we were talking about the gimmick where you hold down the button and shoot the big laser?
Right.
Like that, it was a lot like that. Like, you think that would be useful, but it's always not that useful when push
Well,
comes to shove.
let me tell you the difference between charging the beam in R-Type and releasing the cosmic backhoe.
Mm-hmm.
When you release the cosmic backhoe and it's slowly working its way back to your ship,
Yeah.
you're completely vulnerable. Okay. When you
Yeah.
fire the beam in R-Type, you're not waiting for the beam to return to your ship.
That's
So
true.
I would call it markedly less useful than charging the beam.
The backhoe backs up slow. That's
Yeah.
for sure. No doubt about that. You can also get other things. So it's funny. This is one of those games where like they put the C64 instructions and the Amiga instructions in the same book, right?
Mhm.
Unlike most games that do that, these games are incredibly different. So I
Yeah.
looked over the long array of stuff you could get in the C64 version. I was like, man, this sounds great. But I don't remember seeing any of this. That's because it's not in this version. But there are some pickups. You could get, was this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different things on your ship. Now, we mentioned the backhoe. We mentioned the 2 satellites. You can also get the lasers Boat mentioned that will bounce around. You've also got a speed up that helps you go faster. It's funny, whenever I got this speed up, I didn't really seem like it did a ton.
Yeah,
to me.
yeah. I want to talk about that real quick because
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
feel like this is just a plain old mistake. Like something went wrong when they were coding this game. Because
Yeah.
even in the when you read the manual, they're like, "Be careful with the speed up; it'll make
Yeah.
it hard to control." But whenever I got it, I just felt like nothing changed. So
Yeah, because the ship's pretty fast anyway.
yeah,
It's not like you're hard up for speed in this.
right.
The one thing I did notice about it is when you picked it up, your ship would shoot forward about I don't know, 4 inches. And then I was like, wow, that sucked. What is that? You can also get this thing called a scatter shot. When you get this, your shots will come out at diagonals.
Yeah,
So
it looks like when you get the diamond in Castlevania.
Okay, I'll take your word on that one. So I mean, there's another thing you can get that will give you a more effective weapon. This is another thing. I'd get it. I'd be like, is it more effective? Because usually it takes forever to shoot this stuff. One last thing I want to mention: the extra weapon in the manual here. They've got these symbols for them, right? When I played this game, it was happening so fast, I had no time to determine what these symbols were. I just
Right.
grabbed whatever wasn't killing me.
This
So
game
when I looked at
moves.
the manual and saw that these were coded, I was baffled.
Yeah, this game moves so quick. All you're thinking about is this an enemy or is it not an enemy? And if it's not an enemy, you try and grab it. You know.
Yeah, you shoot everything, and when you shoot stuff that doesn't instantly go away, that's the thing you might want to try to grab.
That's right.
This has a 1 and 2 player mode. Now, on the C64, they've got this 2-player teamwork mode where one person plays the backhoe effectively and one person plays the ship. And so you're acting as a defense-offense combo to protect your ship. Pretty cool.
See, that's
Bo.
cool. That's cool. I
And
want more games to go back to that old fire truck style co-op gameplay.
Yes, the problem is they got rid of that on the Amiga version. That's for suckers. So we didn't get that. We just got 2-player. There's no teamwork mode at all in ours. On the C64 version, after the title screen, as you go into combat, there's a rockin' tune. You know what I mean? It's a rock and roll because it's a, it's a shooter. You need cool music to get your blood pumping.
Mm-hmm.
And
there's also a very demo-ish like greet screen where they have the scrolling credits on the bottom, the space background. You can tell these guys they love the demo scene.
On the Amiga version, let's talk about the Amiga's in-game music, Bo. Would you like to describe? In fact, I bet you could actually sing a bar or two.
Yeah, it goes a little something like this.
Well, I mean, you're forgetting this.
Oh, you mean the drone? Yeah, that's right. I forgot about the drone.
Never-ending sad drone that happens, as if to say, "I'm in pain. I'm dying. That's all I can do is make this noise." It goes on to the entire game. Pretty slick, Boat.
Yeah.
So,
No good. No good. If, I've heard people make the case that you don't want to have music in driving games because they want to hear the sound of the engine or whatever. I can buy that to a certain extent. Maybe you're listening for the RPMs, which is ridiculous in an Amiga game. But But
I was getting ready to say, I mean, that, if you're speaking on behalf of those people, that just had, you're the best spokesman they ever had. I'm listening for the gear change.
but if you are playing a space shooter, what you want to have is a pumping tune, getting you all fired up, ready for action. And you don't get that in this game.
No, you get no tune. You just got
Yeah.
maybe that if like it's some Gregorian monk thing going
Well,
on.
it's the didgeridoo serenade.
This is an insult to other monks, if that's what that is. So, the game has, I believe it's 6 levels, and at the end of each level, you will fight an end boss. Now, for the first example, the first level, there's sort of this like robotic gimmick that's grafted on the front of this asteroid that you fight. On the second level, it's these little, like, almost indestructible, like, satellites that hover around. You got to shoot them all. One level has a on one level, you're fighting this thing that it's just like a square thing that shoots flames out the top, left, bottom, and right. You have to kind of go around it and shoot it. And then there's probably the most interesting level. There's a level, actually, if you're watching the videos, we're seeing it right now. You go around the whole level, and you're fighting a ship, and you have to blow off the turrets and stuff. And
very similar. It's like a different perspective on the what's that 5200 game you guys played? The Dreadnought Factor.
The Dreadnought Factor. Well, yeah, it's a much crappier. but this game is no Dreadnought Factor. But the funny thing about this is once you go all the way around the ship, and by the way, some of the guns respawn for some reason. I noticed that too. I don't know if you noticed that.
No.
And by the way, I would have never gotten here without cheating. I could have got the first level without cheating.
Yeah.
After you can kill all this thing's guns, you have to go to the belly of the ship, and they've got like a hangar, and an alien head with like a long neck comes out and starts to bite you. It'll bite you, and so you have to get in front of it and shoot it and to kill the ship because so I'm like, what is this? Like, what kind of cargo are these guys? You know, but it's in there. And then on the last level, you got to fight this giant sort of pink. I don't know, takes up half the screen. It's got a weak point, and it's got these 2 big pincers, and it shoots crap. You got to kill that thing, and then you're done. That's your ball game right there. So I mean, I would call this standard fare in terms of the levels and whatnot. What's your take?
Yeah, I mean, this game sets out to be a horizontal space shooter that's a ripoff of R-Type, and it succeeds about probably 70% of its mission, I would say.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm not going to can this game or pan it. I mean, is this a upper tier shooting game on the Amiga? No, but is it mid tier? Absolutely, and probably upper mid tier. It scrolls nicely. The graphics look nice. The ship looks cool. The ships you're fighting most of the time look like ships, it's like 2 or 3 steps above, say, like a Blood Money in terms of the enemies. Like, they come in, they sort of look like aliens and stuff. I mean, they're sometimes it's just little shapes, but they're okay. But the power up system's okay. It's not the best. I like stuff like more like Alcon, or where you can like switch the weapons whatever you want as opposed to just picking them up. The weapons in this are okay. The fire stuff's okay. It's not the worst. It sucks that it has no music. That's sort of a bummer. That would have lifted it slightly. But I mean, really, to me, this just seems to be a kind of an attractive by the numbers horizontal shooter.
Well, here's the thing. There's a couple points I want to make here.
Sure, get in there.
The first one is that this is 1988, so this is super early for a game that looks this good. Okay, that we're probably in year number 2 or year number 1.5 of the Amiga having any number of releases to speak of, and so I'm real impressed with the visual fidelity of this game with the year that it came out. Number 2. The enemy design, the ship design, all of that stuff, the art style is, like you said, it's very well done. This isn't an agony type game where the enemies are just various blobs of nothing. This is everything looks like it was sort of designed artistically with a purpose. So props to that. The problem with this game is that it falls into the same tropes that a lot of shooters from this era do, in that one, if you miss a power up, you're screwed. You basically
Yeah.
just you're better off just resetting. Two, and this is the bigger sin, when you die, the world goes black, the space appears, player one appears, and then you're back in. When I play a shooter and I die, I want to get right back into the action right away. Now, I
Yeah.
understand you may want to play with this game uses a checkpoint system, so you don't spawn immediately where you die. But there's a good, I
No.
would say, 8-second break between the time when you die and when you're back playing again. And that's
Yeah.
way, way,
And
way
same with
too
loading.
long.
It just if there's a big long gaps from
Mhm.
when you start the game and when you're in between levels. I don't know what was going. Maybe they were decrunching or something. Maybe there's a
I
lot
don't
of
know. And the game starts weirdly too, because you start it up and the very first thing it tells you to do is to insert the second disc.
yeah.
And so I don't get that at all. It's
I'm
weird.
assuming. Well, I'm assuming that was some sort of WHD. I'm not gonna hold that against them. On mine, I had just hit like the arrow keys a bunch of times and it just would start.
I just mashed all the buttons on the
Yeah.
keyboard till it went forward. But
That's the boat way.
this is an upper mid tier level shooter on the Amiga for sure. I
Yeah.
would much rather play this than X Factor or whatever that nonsense was we played a while ago. The only game that comes to mind that I enjoyed more than this was Apidia, but Apidia suffers from the exact same faults that this game does. Exactly the same faults. Um, if this game had a rockin' soundtrack, I would definitely bump it up into the A range as far as Amiga shooters go.
Yeah.
But the lack of music and the amount of downtime, plus the difficulty level, I feel like it's too much too early. This is I would put this solidly as a B title.
Well, the thing I don't get is this is the Amiga, right? I mean, you're right. This is a good effort, but we can't have the crap that's on the C64. We can't have the 2-player mode that where you get to play the teamwork. We can't get the rockin' soundtrack.
Yeah.
Or I mean, if you look at the C64 versions, I just happen to have a port comparison here, but if you're watching at home, like the C64 version of this, it's much more insane. It feels much
Well,
more different, much more fun.
yeah, it's got first of all, it's got the beam. It's got the chargeable beam and the
Yeah,
cosmic backhoe.
the
So
beam goes a long way.
yeah, it combines them both. It also has a rockin' soundtrack.
Yeah, it does.
It also, to me, is more visually exciting to watch. The Amiga version definitely has a higher graphical fidelity.
Yes.
You could confuse the Amiga game with an arcade game. It looks that good, but I think that the C64 looks better for what it is and what's going on. Um, this is, I thought about why did they do this? And the only thing I can come up with is maybe we're still so early on in the Amiga's life cycle with Factor 5 being a German outfit. Maybe the Amiga just hadn't taken off yet. They didn't want to waste development resources on a platform that didn't have a user base in terms of profit. But they did, of course, with the C64. C64 was, at its peak, in the mid to late 80s. And so that's the only thing I can come up with why they sort of wasted so many opportunities with the Amiga version.
Well, it's possible that as they were developing the Amiga version, maybe they heard some rumblings from Activision. It's
Yeah,
possible
maybe so. Maybe so.
that maybe technically they hadn't, because we obviously Factor 5 really honed their skills and led the way with some, incredible uses of the hardware. So maybe they just were still, maybe this was like a learning game. They were trying to get
Mhm.
everything put together. And you got to think the C64 by this time it'd been out for a long time, so they knew all the tricks that you could use on it. So I guess there's that. But as it was, like I said, it's not a complete debacle or anything. But yeah,
No.
and it's. I would say I think Apidia. There are some comparisons to be made between the two, but Apidia, I like the themes a lot more original, and I just think Apidia is just a far more beautiful game
Yeah.
than this. But they're both difficult, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And like I said, there are some cool. They've added some cool elements. There's some physical places where you have to go slide through stuff and shoot through stuff. Very much again like R-Type. So
Mhm.
clearly they it's funny that they end up making R-Type. And I will say, having played R-Type this week to compare it, R-Type is a better game. It has sound during gameplay. I mean, it's that kind of sound where it kind of breaks up sometimes when they're, when the song is playing, they'll change the channel, that stuff, the sound channel. But I mean, it's still better. The graphics are marginally better. And it's, it's got more stuff. They've got the R-Type, arcade stuff, and the R-Type was just a better game. But as an R-Type clone, I think they did a pretty decent job, all things to consider. So, with all that said, Boat, did we get any feedback from any of the listeners on this one?
We did. We got a couple Discord reviews this week. The first one came in from Pajako6502. He says, I would say that either of the games are too tough, but going back and playing the R-Type port, that kicked my behind as well. I clearly suck at these games. After an hour of play, mostly waiting for new games to start, I beat the first boss with the only cheat being auto fire and hugging that bullet shield like a long-lost family member.
Yeah.
So yes, Katikas is based on R-Type, but it has differences with the weapons. For when the charge-up shooting is only pickup, you can have that or the bullet shield. He says the graphics are pretty good, but feel like a home computer game, whereas R-Type from the same people does not. He calls it a great game, and although R-Type is better, Katikas is different enough to make it worth playing. 8 out of 10. Barkbit says, I spent a good 30 minutes on this game and could only get to the first checkpoint. Then I gave up and gave it a good rage quit. Maybe I'm losing my reflexes, but at least I could beat the first stage in the obvious inspiration R-Type. You need to memorize every little enemy and bullet to get anywhere with this, at least without cheats. Graphics are serviceable and sound effects are satisfying, but sadly there's no music. You don't count the never-ending drone loop in the background. A small beginning of great things to come for Factor 5, but not one I will go back to. 4 out of 10. Burial from the Bark.
If that drone track, maybe that was just a filler, and they just never got around to put anything in there, too. You never know.
Pajako also mentions the falling block enemy obstacle thing. That is dumb. That's real dumb.
Well,
the way I don't know if that's in R-Type or not, but it guarantees you that you're going to take hits. I mean, you've got to play it exactly perfect.
Yeah, well, we're watching the first level here if you're watching along. And on the first level, as you go through this very thin alley, and you're attacked by these, big, chunky-looking robots, a power-up floats just above where you go through the alley. If you don't get that power-up and get the reflective lasers, you can't get past those blocks. You're boned. I mean, I'm sure a genius could do it, but and so what you have to do, you have to quickly get that power up and hope you don't get killed by the chunky robots. That's tough right out of the gate. I mean, we're talking less than a minute into the game.
Yeah.
It's a lot to ask. I looked up the reviews. Most of the reviews I found were from, guess what? Not this, but Denaris. But I did. Lemon has Katikas at a 6.29. The people over at Hall of Light give this a lower score of 80%. And as I look down through the reviews of the day for Denaris, this thing is pretty much firmly in that 80% range. I mean, with a little bit of variance in the 70s and a 1 or 2 going into the low 90s. So you've got, and I think that's a pretty decent assessment. I would put this somewhere in that ballpark myself, but I think you said you would as well. It's not a dud by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's a pretty decent game. This is an Amiga. I mean, I would go ahead and call this an Amiga exclusive, considering it's not really comparable to the C64 version. So it's something you can't play anywhere else in this format. So I guess it's worth looking at as a curiosity. But it's a fun game, and if you're a real hardcore fan of these sorts of games, it might be for you. Any final thoughts on this one, Boater?
No.
And by the way, I couldn't find this for sale, so you can try looking for the other one. That's the only way you're going to find it.
If you ask any Amiga repair technician what the most problematic component of a motherboard is, they'll undoubtedly mention capacitors. The electrolytic capacitors that shipped with the Amiga are 30 years old or older at this point, and each one is a ticking time bomb waiting to explode battery acid all over your motherboard, sometimes damaging it irrevocably. Don't wait. Replace your capacitors now. Full capacitor kits for every Amiga model are available now at retrorewind.ca. Don't want to attempt the repair yourself? Use their white glove recap service and leave the intricate removal and soldering process to the professionals using industry standard equipment. Use the promo code AMIGOS10 at checkout and save 10% off your cap kit or service. Remember, make RetroRewind.ca your first stop for all your Commodore computer needs.
Amiga News.
All right, Aaron, it's time for some Amiga news. We start with Tom Cherryholmes, who is the genius, and I do not say that with hyperbole. He's a legitimate genius. He invented the FujiNet. He is a sort of a polymath when it comes to computers, and he has decided that he is going to his thesis is that the Amiga was conceived and executed as a video game system. This, of course, makes people angry when you say things like that, because they say, no, it was creative. Look at all the awesome stuff that it did in the United States. Well, nobody cares about the Amiga in the United States. Okay, people care about it. Where people care about it, it is a game-playing machine. Okay,
True. That's all I care about for.
And so he says, well, okay, I'm going to prove this thesis, okay? I'm going to write Pac-Man using only operating system calls, okay?
All right.
That's where I bow out, because I don't know what that means, okay? But what I'm guessing is that it's sort of like peek and poke statements on the old 8-bits, where there's all these things built into the OS at the root level, where you don't have to code various things from scratch. You can call upon the operating system to provide things for you. And so he goes through it. He's basically laying out the templates for all of the different graphical things that he's going to use. He talks about that stuff, and I guess eventually this thing it's going to be Pac-Man. It's going to be Pac-Man, a new version of Pac-Man for the Amiga. What do you think about this, Aaron?
Well, much like you, I'm far too dumb to fully grasp the incredible awesomeness of what this guy's putting together. But I think it's an interesting project, especially if he's doing this. You see, this is for like a school project.
No, he's doing this because he just sits around and comes up with awesome stuff to do.
I see. Well, then I still think it's a good idea. Just see if you could do it. You know, we've played a lot of arcade ports and whatnot here recently, and so this isn't assumedly this isn't transcode. This isn't using an engine, which is what we've seen. He's just gonna do it old school, I guess. And hopefully, I haven't watched this video. It's the first time I've seen this, but I'm going to go back and watch it. Maybe if he explained it to me, I can at least intelligently discuss what he's doing. But since you don't know either, I guess we're going to have to wait and see. But, I mean, I like the idea. First of all, the Fuji, that's awesome. We both know that. So,
yeah,
you know this guy's got a lot going on upstairs, you know. And so it should be an interesting project. And I think the big thinkers that don't just use the Amiga for games like we do, this is probably something that will really interest them. Look right there. He's got a little Pac-Man going across the screen.
Yeah.
Just using the tool. So clearly he's making some headway on it. So this will be fun to watch. You can see here how he's talking. He's actually sort of using this as an instructional tool as well, which is nice. So maybe I'll go back and learn a few things or two, Bo. Maybe that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. So we'll definitely keep an eye on that.
Yeah, man.
Next up, Aaron, it is there's a new meeting of the Southeast Michigan Vintage Computer Club coming up. So this is run by our buddy Adam, aka Commodore Chronicles. And so if you are in the Southeast Michigan area, I think Petzel is also, he's been known to make an appearance or two around these parts. This is January 18th, 2025. So still plenty of time to put it on your calendar. Also sponsored by Retro Rewind, our buddies in the retro scene. Feel free to check this out. This club has exploded. It's precisely the opposite of what happened to the old Taze Valley Classic Computer Club, Aaron.
Well,
where we started out in the dojo, then we went to my basement.
Yeah, and doing anything computer related was frowned upon for the most part. So yeah, but we will fire that back up. But yeah, this looks great. They're gonna have some guests in there. It looks like Joe Strohschneider from Joe's Computer Museum is going to be there, and Eric from Eric's Edge will be there as well. So that's kind of neat. these things, you're right, these are taking off. It's so gratifying too, because I talked to Adam for a long time where he had a long build up to get any action on this thing.
Yeah.
And I think what really, I mean, listen, I toot the guy's horn, but I think what really got the ball rolling is when Frank came in, tossed and threw a little money on the project. And I mean, they're really cooking now. They're really cooking. I mean, they're getting big meetups going and swap meets and stuff. So it's gratifying to see this stuff taking off. Because, we all the time we hear about all these different computer clubs in England. You saw it firsthand when you were over there with that Rabbi's event. They had their own banners, and some of them are aloof or whatever. But we don't get that kind of action around here locally. So it's nice to see someone taking the reins and getting it done. I'm very pleased by that.
Yeah. And speaking of big events coming up this weekend, the annual Sacktown Jubilee is back, Aaron.
Yeah.
AmiWest, established in 1998, still going strong. It's
crazy.
going down this weekend at the Holiday Inn Express, which is where we held our first boat fest in Sacktown, Sacramento, California. You can head on over to amiwest.net and you can get yourself situated with everything that you want to do. The show is free this year, so you can drop on by. And unfortunately, the hotel room block is sold out, so you're gonna have to find lodging somewhere else. But it's good news for the event. Unfortunately, the ever popular banquet is also sold out, so you will need to arrange for your own dinner as well. This looks like. Eating. Yeah, this looks like a of course who else would you expect to show up at the AmiWest banquet this year than globe-trotting Amiga superstar Trevor Dickinson. He's going to be there giving his talking about what's going on with the PowerPC based Amigas, OS 4.1, and his collaboration with Mr. Pleasance himself on the book From Vultures to Vampires, the Commodore Amiga.
I'm looking at this listen to this guest list. Dave Haney, your old buddy.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to this one. Dan Salvato. Now, if you are a fan of his game, or I listen to them talk about this guy a lot over on Pixel Gaiden. He wrote the game Doki Doki Literature Club, which apparently is a crazy game. They put this guy over like $1 million. He's also doing some Amiga stuff, though. So it makes sense that he's there. Of course, you mentioned Trev. Our good buddy Doug. Looks like Doug's coming out of a hibernation to come to this thing. From 10-Minute Amiga Retrocast. Alex Perez of Rabbit Hole Computing. Stephen Soley. And Matthew Lehman, owner of Amiga Kit. That's nice. It will be there. So those are some pretty big guests, Boater.
Yeah,
for this thing, and this looks good. Like Boat said, it's literally happening right now.
Yeah, and
if you are there, hi everybody.
If you are an Amiga fan, this is it. If you want to go to an Amiga only event in the United States, this is the only big event we've got. So
is this really the only one? That's crazy.
Well, I mean, you can count there's the Westchester group that Bill runs, but that's more of just like a local club. If you're looking for like a nationwide Amiga only event, AmiWest is it, buddy. So
I hadn't thought of it that way, Bo. That's good stuff. I'm looking at the schedule here though. So they're running all weekend. They'll be running until 5:00 on Sunday. So you still got time, if you're watching this live or hear this soon after, to head down to the Holiday Inn Express in Sacramento and have a good time. And I hope they have a real good turnout and have a lot of fun down there. It should be a good time. It's a good lineup too, Boat.
Yeah, man. All right, guys. Well, it's a slow news week this week, Aaron. So aside from those big events coming up, we got nothing else to talk about. Why don't we move right along to what we're playing next week?
Let's find out, Bo. It's Flimbo's Quest, Boat.
Now, Aaron,
I
want you to think back in your mind to some of the platformers that we've played, some of the stars of those platform games. Yeah. And then look at our boy Flimbo there, right there on the cover, dead center.
What is Flimbo? It's a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
Is he wearing what is that kind of hats he got on there, Bo?
It's a hat, and then under the bill, you got an F there. That's so he doesn't lose it. I make my kids write their names on their band hats like that too.
You know,
So-
why don't people wear around shirts with their names on it and hats with their initials on it? With them,
Mhm.
that's because that way people would know. Put yourself
Yeah.
over, kid.
That's
What
right.
he's doing.
That's right.
I have never played this one though, so I'm
Me
looking forward
neither.
to giving this a whirl.
Yeah. So anyway, we will check out Flimbo's Quest next week. If you are interested in supporting Amigos, you can head on over to patreon.com/Amigos podcast. We would love to have you join our Discord server. What a joy it was this week to have a former student join us on Discord.
Yeah,
Makes me feel happy that some of my former students are making their own way in the world.
and old.
And so we'd love to have you. You can write reviews for us to read on the air for the games we cover, and just basically bask in the glow of our virtual presence. So with that said, we will see you guys next week, and until then, adios.
Amigos is made possible by contributions from listeners like you. Patreon supporters help choose the games we play, receive exclusive magnets, and get access to the Amigos Retro Gaming Discord server. Visit patreon.com/Amigos podcast if you'd like to support the show and join our community.